Hello, everyone. Thanks for being here tonight. I had a couple of books that came out in September, and I did a bunch of readings. I'm not going to read from them. I'm going to read new things. And I want to preface reading these by saying that, and I mentioned this in the talk I gave on Saturday, that in 2017 I decided that I was going to type a poem every day for the whole year. So I would go down to my basement in the morning, and I would listen to records, and I would read. And eventually I'd get into this headspace where I would type a poem, and I gave myself some parameters, which were the fact that the poems had to be at least 14 lines long. They had to have a beginning and a middle and an end, so I couldn't just type 20 lines and stop. I had to start somewhere, move through something, and arrive at something else. And then I was going to make any quick notes on them I wanted to make. Usually it was the date and whatever I was listening to or what I'd been reading, or maybe a quote from what I'd been reading. And then I was going to put the poems face down on my desk, and I wasn't going to allow myself to look at them until 2018. So I'd have this big stack of poems at the end of the year, and at the end of 2017, I was having so much fun that I decided to just keep doing it. And I did it all through 2018, and sometimes I wrote more than one poem, so by the end of it, I had about 750 poems face down on the desk that I hadn't looked at. It's just been in the last few months that I've actually had the time to start going through them and typing some of them up. So all of these poems come out of that daily practice. Wilder, bluer, yonder. I packed my bags and left my home. And when I got to the edge, I did what everyone does and stepped off into the great blue yawn, which I was surprised to find, though I shouldn't have been, never stops yawning. So now I never stop yawning, being as much as I am a part of it. Every morning, I eat one pink donut, and every night before bed, I take a couple of the ones and zeros my doctor prescribed for me, both for the pains I get in all the wet weather and also to help me stop yawning long enough to fall asleep and dream that I am a lovable radish farmer named Scorch. With my wife Maudine and my two bright children, one named Scooter and the other Croissant, we live a clean but dirty life in the dirt, with so many rainbow radishes that sometimes even we, a family of radish farmers, don't know how to use them all up. Fortunately, we have neighbors. For instance, the bakers, who are bakers, and the butchers, who make bikes. We trade our radishes to the bakers for baguettes and to the butchers for a new kickstand. In fact, we trade our radishes for everything we need. It's an enormously good life, free from bears and bullies and cops. And no one yawns ever because no one's ever tired. Plenty of oxygen flows to our brains. We take big, huge gulps regularly, as much as we can breathe. All the air is pure and free, but eventually the dream ends, of course, or the dream blinks instantly away, and I wake up yawning with a whole lot missing. I eat my one pink donut and think about my family, not the radish one, the real one I left for this life in the yawn. Cold and metallic in the chill autumn rain, I yawn along with it to the detriment of something, though for the life of me lately, I can't remember what. The Milky Way to go. I needed some direction, or I needed some directions regarding the Milky Way to go. Was it this way or that way? Was it somewhere unknown? I kept asking the lit-up young people scattered along the road at odd angles, but they seemed preoccupied with the vagaries of release dates and the high green skies of home, which were blossoming all around us and even in my bones. I began to feel silky and skeletal and once again strong. But to what end, I wondered, since I was clearly very lost or very found or maybe even both. Someone asked to borrow my coat, and I obliged, but I was wooden then and cold. Thankfully, the pine tree sap kept me company as I shivered all through the night. Its IV was slow, but its IV was continuous. At some point, weddings and funerals stopped being a thing, or they were the only thing, and words of kindness and generosity stopped being spoken, except by the birds, who we all know don't speak. Is this the Milky Way to go? I asked a scarlet bewitched one from my own perch on the porch. Yes, yes, yes. Or no, 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 it chirped or proposed. So I walked in a circle until the pasture came to light. And there I saw the grazing cows. I heard the baby crying stars. I drank the snow that was falling in my mouth and froze in that place like a signpost. Is everybody okay? All right. It occurs to me, these poems, for some reason, wound up being a lot more narrative than I usually am when I write poems. I'm not sure if that had something to do with the actual process, but it's sort of interesting to me. I feel like I'm in a space right now where I really don't know what these poems are. This one's called Aesthetics 2, T-O-O. I teach aesthetics at the Art Academy of Cincinnati, which is a sister school of PNCA. I should mention before I read this that I love my students at the Art Academy. They're amazing, they're totally inventive, but because they're artists, they're also pretty much resistant to everything. So sometimes they don't do the reading. This is called Aesthetics 2. Nobody does the reading again, and it launches me over the edge. Are you fucking kidding? I see that the students come back on Wednesday. There will be a quiz, class dismissed. And on the way back to my office, I stopped to confess to the dean what I just did, that I cursed at the students because they failed to do the reading. Good, she says, without even looking up. And back at my desk, I fall asleep and dream that two of my favorite bands, Jawbreaker and Joy Division, are both reuniting for a tour together. Somehow, Ian Curtis is back from the dead, and Blake Schwarzenbach decided to stop hating punk rock. I love Blake Schwarzenbach, and having been in bands myself, I understand his desire as a musician to not keep doing the same thing the same way again and again. I understand, too, the difficulty of working with other people in an artistic setting, tempers and egos and associations and preferences. Mass Giorgini and I almost came to blows recording Another Sunny Afternoon, Squirt Gun's second and worst record. To this day, though, Mass is like a brother to me, cliche thing that people in bands say, I know, but it's true. And as everyone else knows, the relationship between art and truth, even when it's bad art, is complicated at best. Art is the becoming and happening of truth, Heidegger said in German, so who knows what it means in English or what he actually said. Accurate translation's not even a real thing, is it? Is accuracy a matter of what the words say or how they say it? Is it what they mean literally or what those meanings point to? As with all my roller coasters, I have jumped the rails again. But in the dream in my office, after canceling aesthetics, I wanted to go to the Joy Division Jawbreaker reunion show, and I wanted to take my students too. But my students predictably wanted to go to the mall. They were in fact already waiting for me there at Panera, and I was late for our meeting. Ferocious with electricity and sadness and disappointment, I wanted to see those bands so bad, and I knew I'd never get another chance. Nevertheless, I didn't go to the show. I went to the mall and got hopelessly lost. The students were hoping I'd be interesting for once. The pack on my back was heavy with guns. When I finally found Panera, only one student was still waiting. I gave her the guns, but I told her they were words. Don't forget to do the reading, I said. I won't, she replied, in a voice sort of hurt. I always do the reading, it's the others who don't. You're right, I said as her eyes wandered off. Save your generation, I almost called out, but instead I started coughing up blood. I live in a neighborhood in Cincinnati called Westwood. It's called Bad Baby Westwood. Sometimes I delight in writing a poem that begins with some ridiculous, initially meaningless title, but which in the process of the poem gets unpacked such that by the end it maybe seems wholly intentional or determined from the get-go, or it gets me somewhere I never intended to go. On second thought, maybe this isn't sometimes, maybe this is all the time. For instance, the title of this poem, Bad Baby Westwood, came pulsing out of the pink sun's burning turtleneck this morning, and right on time, too. Something I don't really have a lot of, but who does, right? Bad Baby Westwood, so dodgy and dashy. Bad Baby Westwood, devouring and devouring. Strawberry yogurt, mashed peas, and a cat mule. What's a cat mule? Who the fuck knows? And don't say fuck in front of the baby. No wonder the Westwood trees are so glum and the pollen count's so high. My daughter Agnes isn't a baby anymore. She makes her own breakfast now, roast potatoes 4 and a fried egg on an everything bagel with Vermont white cheddar, which is also clearly the title of another poem. Sounds kind of amazing too, and a heck of a lot more appetizing than a cat mule. Anyway, even when Agnes was a baby, she wasn't bad. She was a great baby, rosy and fat and smiling over everything. That's why affectionately I used to call her Bad Baby. It was a little joke between us. She'd throw her apples on the floor and clap her hands and squeal, and I'd say, Bad Baby, with a lot of emphasis on the bad and a lot of emphasis on the baby, and she'd clap her hands and squeal some more. Then I'd clean up the apples, which were a sauce, of course, since at that point she didn't have any teeth. Now she has the usual number of teeth, and when she throws her apples indiscriminately, they actually hurt if they hit you because they are not a sauce. They are full-on apples. She calls me Granny Smith, and I clap my hands and squeal. The cat mule chases our chocolate lab German short-haired pointer puppy bear around the house. Westwood's the neighborhood in Cincinnati where we live. It's a good place to raise a family. Even now, there are some houses very near us for sale. Bring your bad babies where the sun shines pink in a turtleneck of quietude. Fried eggs, cat mules, tender buttons, the works. Hurry, though. The babies are growing up as we speak. Their badness is waning, and soon they'll have teeth. Soon they'll have apples and anxiety and smoke. The shadow of their big-hearted goodness is fading. I feel like this is going horribly. I apologize. Punk apple sausage. The dishes don't do themselves, and neither does the laundry. But somehow the sun rises every day, even when the clouds mostly block out its face. Yesterday was holy rain. Today was whole wheat toast potato 4, gleaming bone apple, concrete crow. Now it's getting really good. Cow ulcer, paint meat, I'll be here all day. No, actually, I won't. I'm going to meet Blake for coffee, and then I'm picking Agnes up from school. Tonight I have band practice, which was the first thought I had upon waking up this morning, the very first one to make me smile. Noise anchor, cough butter. Just when it gets quiet, it's not quiet. Symbol ghost, donut bank, sausage poem, tank granola. I guess it's okay to show you how I pray. I want to believe in something rather than being consumed by nothing. Hammer blonde, soda burst, sheep scraper, friend runner. Someday in the future, I'll rewind this to chores, but until then, fast forward to the good parts. Hockey goat, snorkel sock, dolphin bucket. Feel me, you feel me? This dopey pile of twinkling leaves, that invisible presence that animates all things. Scuzz bleep to pockets of God, barbed wire crickets to rocket giraffe, cadmium fleece to cotton crop face. I'm usually responsive when you defibrillate my heart. I walked this morning's morning through town on a leash. I'm just going to read 2 more. I'm in hell right now, but I love you all. This is called the typing type. When I was typing these poems, I was typing on an old Remington Portable No. 7 from 1947. The typing type. Whenever there's something to be done, you can bet I'll want to do it differently than most other people would want to do it. I'll be damned if I'm going to do it the way someone else would go about it, since that would be their way, and my way is always my way. This is true even if their way is better, by which one usually means more efficient, or giving rise to a finer or more practical, more lucrative result. My values are different. I don't know why. Maybe it's an allergic reaction to sameness. Maybe it's instinct. Am I a grizzly bear or a dog? Maybe the former. I like to keep bees, not in a hive in my shirt jacket pocket, and they like to keep me company. That's just one for instance of how many instincts are different. You may wonder how I know what the bees think, but I can't tell you. I just know, the same way you know that you like pimento cheese, but I hate the stuff, except as a kind of mortar when I'm building a cracker house. Then it seems fairly useful, though not at all delicious in its gluey gloppiness. The color's not right either. I mean, for cheese, it's too in between orange and pink, more like the color of coral than cheese, and that's great if we're talking about coral, but we're not. We're talking about cheese, and it's a god-awful color if we're talking about cheese, which we are. I admit it's probably just me, but think about it, and maybe you'll begin to see. Maybe you won't. It depends on what you value and how set you are in your ways. I have been 185 years old since I was 15, which means I am very set in my ways, which are odd and messy to say the least. I like, for example, when structures fall and all the money burns up and the storms roll in and people just love and hug each other. For another example, I type on an old Remington Noiseless No. 7 from 1947 because of how set in my ways I am and because of how messy those ways are. Well, maybe not exactly because, but it's related. You see, I'm the typing type, and you're the word processing type, or you're the pimento cheese type, or the Bigfoot type. I can get down with all of that for you. We don't have to be the same way in order for us to get along. In fact, I think it's probably better if we don't do things the same way at all, because if I find out that you're doing something that needs to be done in the same way that I would do it, I'll change my way to something different. I'll be damned to do it your way. I'll be damned, which is heaven to me, unless it's heaven to you too. Then we'll definitely have a problem. This is my last one. Thank you so much. This is called the Pretty Redhead. While I was typing these poems, these daily poems, I was also trying to translate the poems of Guillaume Apollinaire and failing. And this is what happened when I was trying to translate his poem called The Pretty Redhead. It has an epigraph from his poem, which is, "O sun, it is the time for flaming judgment." Always I was misunderstanding the words. Too many guns in the air to be happy. The news but a sour case of pink eye with a crust. I thought, or I hoped, the tyrant they'd elected wouldn't last a year. Us versus them versus themselves, us versus us. I was deliberately mistranslating Guillaume Apollinaire. "Gentle people," I wrote, "allow me to ramble if you'll allow me to ramble. The future isn't flags, but it isn't art either. Something more unreasonably human needs to happen." I went on and on vaporously. There were too damn many guns. All my favorite revolutionaries were dead and they were buried. It had been this way for many years already. The baby daughter had grown into a lovely young woman, bright and tall and green as spring beans. The rhetoric, on the other hand, was ratcheting. The divisions had been sown and were continuing. Anything without a message we approved of was suspect or simply excluded, even though we knew inclusion to be the harder thing, requiring that room be prepared in one's life. Somehow, I was a part of the us and also the them at the very same time. I needed forgiveness for the sins I knew I had committed, but also for the ones I didn't know I'd committed or that I'd committed unintentionally. Intention's always been such a tricky defense, since it's largely a private thing even when it's declared. I rolled or wheeled or rocked in my complicity. I heard horsey sounds coming out of my mouth. There were so many guns in the blur of the Republic. In my deliberate misreading of Apollinaire, I wrote, "You should all feel free to make fun of me. 98% of the universe is darkness, and I am a darkness even unto myself. So many invisible clouds we do breathe. I can't see what I can't say, and we and them won't let me. Please, if you can, have pity on me." It's possible maybe that none of this was so, that I didn't write any of this, or is that just the wishfulest thinking by me? The vaporous and lovely made their judgments while I scrambled. You'd have called them cold, I bet, but maybe we only ever give what we get. No, I meant that the other way. We get what we give, or at least some of us, but I get tangled up in my head. I've never liked conflict, competition, or smoke, nor rationalizing, justifying, or qualifying love. I don't know what to do, I kept writing to myself. There was no way to fix it, and it was ambiguous at best. Mostly, it was vague. The sun bled into my mouth on the paper. Isolation and ignorance ran among us and me. What are the heart's possibilities? I now fully admit was a ruinous ending, and I am no one's enemy, I can't be, was even worse. I was a jammed up gun in the weeds. I'm sorry, dear daughter. I'm sorry, friends and family. I was so completely, deliberately afraid. Thank you.